Ever wondered how something as simple as potassium can significantly cut your risk of stroke, high blood pressure, heart disease, and even death? Yes, we're talking about the often overlooked mineral, potassium, the forgotten electrolyte. Its importance in our health and longevity can't be overstated, yet it often gets sidestepped in our daily dietary conversations. The role potassium plays is remarkable. Quite a few scientific studies have shed light on its benefits. One such large-scale study, involving more than 10,000 participants, revealed a striking fact. For each 1,000 milligrams of potassium intake, the risk of cardiovascular disease was seen to reduce by a whopping 18%. Now, that's a statistic worth noting. Yet another study, this time with a sample size of 20,000 people, brought to light an equally significant finding. By merely replacing normal salt, which is sodium chloride, with a small amount of potassium chloride, the participants observed a decrease in the risk of stroke by 14%, cardiovascular events by 13%, and a reduction in overall mortality by 12%. The fascinating part is that these results could have been even better by using salts that contain significantly more potassium chloride. It's incredible how a simple shift in our dietary choices can have such profound effects on our health. But why is potassium so influential? What makes it a key player in maintaining our well-being? It's not just about reducing risks. Increasing your intake of potassium is also a great way to manage high blood pressure, also known as hypertension. It's time we turn our attention to this forgotten electrolyte. It's time we understand its role, its importance, and how we can incorporate it into our daily lives. We owe it to ourselves to explore and utilize the benefits of potassium for a healthier, longer life. Quite fascinating, isn't it? Now let's delve deeper into what potassium really is. So, what exactly is potassium, and why is it so crucial for optimal health and longevity? Potassium, in its simplest definition, is a mineral. It's one of those elements on the periodic table you might remember from your high school chemistry class. But it's not just any mineral. It's a vital one that naturally occurs in our bodies, playing a significant role in our overall health and well-being. Potassium is primarily found in an array of foods we often associate with a healthy diet. Picture a bunch of bananas, a handful of apricots, a plate of leafy greens, a bowl of legumes, or a small pile of nuts. These are all rich sources of potassium, packed with this essential mineral that our bodies need to function properly. But here's where the plot thickens. Despite potassium's presence in a variety of wholesome foods, a large portion of the population is deficient in this crucial mineral. Why, you might ask? Well, the answer is rather simple, yet concerning. Most people don't consume enough of these potassium-rich foods, opting instead for diets high in processed foods and low in fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts. This deficiency in potassium is more common than you might think. The typical Western diet, for example, often falls short in providing the recommended daily dose of 4,700 milligrams of potassium. Most people only consume around 2,250 milligrams per day, which is far below the desired intake. But why is this a cause for concern? Well, potassium is not just another mineral. It's an electrolyte that helps regulate fluid balance, nerve signals, and muscle contractions. A deficiency in potassium can lead to a host of health issues, including high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, and even death. Now that we know what potassium is, let's discuss why our bodies need extra potassium. Ever wondered why we need an extra dose of potassium? Well, let's delve into that. You see, the adequate daily dose of potassium is around 4,700 milligrams. This might seem like a hefty amount, but when we look back in time, it becomes apparent that our ancestors were consuming even more. In pre-agricultural societies, potassium intake could reach up to 7,000 to 15,000 milligrams per day. Quite a difference, isn't it? Now, let's bring it back to the present. Unfortunately, the average person in the West only consumes about 2,250 milligrams of potassium per day. That's less than half the recommended amount, and a mere fraction of what our ancestors used to consume. So, why the drastic drop? The answer lies in our modern diets. With the rise of processed foods and the decrease in consumption of fresh fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts, our potassium intake has taken quite a hit. But the good news is, we can change that. Simply adding more potassium-rich foods to our diet can help bridge the gap. Eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, legumes, and nuts can boost our potassium intake. However, diet alone might not be enough to reach the optimal potassium intake. This is where supplements come into play. By adding around 2,000 milligrams of extra potassium to our daily regimen, we can ensure that we are getting enough of this crucial mineral. Remember though, as with any supplement, it's important to consult with a healthcare professional before starting a new regimen. They can provide guidance based on your individual health needs and ensure that you're consuming a safe and beneficial amount. So, we see that a potassium-rich diet is beneficial. But what about potassium salts? You might be wondering, what are potassium salts? And how can they help boost our potassium intake? Well, to answer that, let's start with a common type of potassium salt, potassium chloride. Now, if you're thinking of table salt, you're on the right track. Regular table salt is known as sodium chloride. Both potassium chloride and sodium chloride are salts, but they differ in the type of mineral they provide. Potassium chloride, as the name suggests, is a source of potassium. Sodium chloride, on the other hand, supplies sodium. Both are important for our health, but too much sodium can lead to health problems, while many of us need more potassium. But here's the catch. If you've ever tasted potassium chloride, you'll know it has a bitter taste. Not exactly what you want when you're seasoning your food, right? That's where mixed salts come in. These are a combination of potassium chloride and sodium chloride. They give you the best of both worlds, providing the potassium you need without the bitter taste. An example of this is low salt, and no, this isn't a sponsored mention. Low salt contains 2/3 potassium chloride and 1/3 sodium chloride. That's a significant amount of potassium in each serving. But you may ask, why not just replace all my regular table salt with potassium salt? That's a good question, and some people do make that switch. Using a salt mixture like low salt can be a beneficial step towards increasing your potassium intake. However, it's important to remember that while these salts can help, they aren't a magic bullet. They're part of a wider approach to a healthier diet and lifestyle. You still need to eat plenty of potassium-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts. To wrap it up, potassium salts, particularly those mixed with sodium, can be a great addition to our diets. They can help us meet our potassium needs without the bitterness of pure potassium chloride. It's clear that potassium salts can be a great addition to our diets, but is replacing regular salt with potassium salt enough? We'll delve into that in our next segment. Stay tuned. Some of you might be thinking, can't I just replace my regular table salt with potassium salt? Let's discuss this. The idea of swapping sodium chloride, our everyday table salt, with potassium chloride isn't as far-fetched as it might initially sound. You see, potassium chloride is a type of salt that is commonly used as a sodium-free substitute. However, potassium chloride does have a slightly bitter taste, which might not be to everyone's liking. That's why mixed salts have been introduced to the market. These are blends of sodium chloride and potassium chloride, offering a balance between familiar flavor and health benefits. A popular example of such a product is low salt, which is not sponsored, by the way. This blend contains 66% potassium chloride and 33% sodium chloride. By using this kind of mixed salt, you can gradually increase your potassium intake without making a dramatic change to your diet. Now you might ask, is this small change really that beneficial? Well, according to research, even a modest increase in potassium intake can have a substantial impact on health. One study involving 20,000 participants found that replacing regular salt with a small amount of potassium chloride reduced the risk of stroke by 14%, cardiovascular events by 13%, and overall mortality by 12%. It's worth noting that these results were achieved with a relatively small amount of potassium chloride. It's plausible to suggest that the benefits could be even more pronounced if the proportion of potassium chloride was increased. To put it simply, making this small change in your diet, replacing some of your sodium intake with potassium, could potentially lead to significant health benefits. It might seem like a small step, but as the saying goes, every little bit counts. As we see, adding potassium to our diet can bring significant health benefits. Let's wrap this up. So, why is potassium so important for health and longevity? You may ask. Well, let's recap what we've learned. Firstly, potassium is an essential mineral that our bodies need to function optimally. It's found in many healthy foods we often neglect, like fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts. Unfortunately, the majority of us don't consume enough of these foods, leading to a widespread deficiency in potassium. Despite this, potassium is frequently overlooked by medical practitioners. They often rely on blood tests to determine potassium levels, which can be misleading. Although your blood levels may appear normal, it doesn't necessarily mean you're consuming the optimal amount of potassium for longevity and optimal health. Now let's remember the significant health benefits of adding extra potassium to our diets. Studies have shown that consuming an adequate amount of potassium can drastically reduce the risk of heart disease, stroke, and even death. It's also a powerful tool in managing high blood pressure. To ensure we're getting enough potassium, we need to be proactive. Consuming a healthy, potassium-rich diet is crucial, but it may not be enough. An additional intake of around 2,000 milligrams of potassium per day can help bridge the gap. One easy way to increase potassium intake is by incorporating potassium salts into our diets. These salts, such as potassium chloride, can be used in place of regular table salt, which is sodium chloride. While potassium chloride has a bitter taste, mixed salts are available that combine potassium chloride and sodium chloride. Even replacing a small portion of your regular table salt with potassium salt can have a significant impact. It's a simple change that can lead to a 14% reduction in stroke risk and a 12% reduction in mortality. Remember, a little extra potassium can go a long way in promoting health and longevity. Thank you for joining us on this journey of understanding the power of potassium.